After you've loaded both your Not Me and You balloons, you'll load the generic kid balloons. As you're putting balloons in and it cools the air, it also heats the liquid nitrogen, causing it to boil off all the faster. Occasionally, you may need to take your container and top off your working container from your storage container. At this point, you'll bring in... Is you doing it again? No. At this point, you'll bring in the people who have died of drugs. You might want to include somebody that they might all know, like Kurt Cobain from, I think it's Nirvana, that committed suicide. You see, it was over drugs. So really, he can be included. Be careful, because that can get you cold. That scared me for a second. I usually try and include, because I knew people, personally, family members that died from drugs, I usually try and include a family member or two, if you've got one. If not, thank God. But then there are friends that I also knew, some very good friends, who are no longer with us, who found out too late that it wasn't worth it. Also, you need to be careful when putting them in that they don't stick to each other, because if you put one in a little too close on the one after, or if you put it in too fast and it shrinks too fast onto another one. It's better if you put them in a little quicker. I mean a little slower, so that they don't stick to each other. Occasionally you'll want to press them all down. Not too hard, because you can crack them and then they won't reinflate. I mean, I'll put one completely in and take it out so you can see what happens to the balloon. When I say it totally goes flat and freezes, it does. But then it almost immediately begins to reinflate as it warms. This balloon was taken to 320 degrees below zero. You can see how with the stretching of the surface as it reinflates, that it'd be very easy to develop a hole. So that's why you want the spare ones of the other names. Of the Not Me and You. There's still a cold spot right here that if I touch, the balloon reinflates all the quicker. But anyway, let's go ahead and put Rick Thompson back in there. Way to go, Rick. Bye, guy. Now at this point I leave the tongs to help hold the other balloons down so that they don't see it when I come out to do the routine. We're going to need to move so that I can do the full demonstration for you, because there's not enough room between us and the walls and the camera to do it here. I'd like to talk to y'all about a big problem we have in our schools today. A lot of the schools. Probably the schools you think don't have a problem have a bigger problem than you know. Drugs. I'm sure some of you know people who have died of drugs, or know people who are doing drugs if you don't know people who have died of drugs. Well, I come from a background that's a lot more colorful than I'll ever tell most people. And I have 5 felonies on my record. I've even been to prison for selling drugs. And I can tell you, it's a dead-end street. One person it was a dead-end street for that I can tell you about is my brother-in-law, Jack Wilson. Here's a guy that everybody loved him, everybody thought he was a great guy and everything, but a friend of his came over with a dose of methadone that he got from a maintenance clinic where they maintained his habit, traded it to Jack for a bag of pot. Jack took the drug, fell asleep on his couch, and he was lost to drugs. He immersed himself in a society and in a situation that caused his death. He's gone now, lost to drugs. That's my brother-in-law. Here's Dave Potter, my cousin. He got so high and so drunk, he fell asleep in the front seat of a pickup truck, flat on his back. Threw up, straight up in the air. It came back down. He drowned on his own vomit because he was so high on drugs. Just like Jack. He gave his life to the party plan and wound up paying a higher price than he wanted to. Dave's brother Phil, and I thought I was crazy. We have a lake up in Washington State called Horseshoe Lake. It's about 3/4 to a mile across. And one day I said, I'm going to swim across it. And I did. I almost didn't make it, but I did. 2 days later, Phil Potter, not to be upstaged by anybody like me, hired a kite, said, you know, I bet I can swim across it too. Well, he almost made it. But he didn't. Another person lost to the drug culture. The drug culture will take the life out of you. Just like you saw the air taken out of these balloons, it will take the life out of you. If you give your life over to drugs, you're lost. You're gone. You're nowhere. You may think you have friends, but if you don't have drugs, you don't have friends. If you don't have money or alcohol, you don't have friends. Try being friends with these people and not do drugs or drink alcohol. It won't work. You see, what a lot of people don't realize is when you give your life over to drugs, you get lost in a cloud. Your life is nothing but a fog, and you lose it everywhere you go. You see, there are different things that you can do with drugs, but all of them end the same way. Every one. Remember Jack Wilson, my brother-in-law? He was lost to drugs. Dave Potter, he was really a nice guy too. Really nice guy. He was lost to drugs. Phil Potter. Maybe you know some people that have been lost to drugs. Mark Thomas, here was a guy in a drug rehab center, had ripped off some members of the mafia, mob, or whoever, some gangland members, ripped him off. They found him dead in his bed at a drug rehab center, overdosed with a hot shot of heroin. He had enough heroin in him to kill 15 men. 15. Mikey Bollinger. He was one of my best friends.